Good evening. I'm Cynthia Hirsch, President of the New York chapter of the Retail and Design Institute. I'd like to welcome you all to our chapter's virtual evening of storytelling part 2. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Retail Design Institute, we are a networking group consisting of professional members of the retail industry with chapters across the globe. Together, we promote the advancement and collaborative practice of creating selling environments. Typically, we host events in retail spaces and hear about design concepts used to capture the story of the brand. However, due to the current state of the world, we have adapted to hosting Zoom events to continue to provide our members with the opportunity to continue to grow, learn, and inspire. We will be opening up for our attendees after around 45 minutes to join and interact with our panelists. A quick thank you to our chapter sponsors, Karen Pierce, Global Direct, Planet Construction, JPMA, Hemati Construction, and StyleMark. Moderating our event tonight will be Diana Revkin, Studio Director and Managing Associate at TPG Architecture and Sponsorship Chair of the New York RDI Board. And with that, I'll hand over the reins to Diana.
Thank you, Cynthia. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to part 2 of our presentation about storytelling and creative process. This evening, we'll be looking at how storytelling and developing a brand narrative is used as part of a business strategy. We have 3 really extraordinary creative leaders with us tonight, and they're going to share some of their work and process. Christina Ferrari, Alasdair Lennox, and Kambiz Hemati. So with that, let's get started. I'm going to introduce first Alasdair Lennox, who is Executive Creative Director of Fitch. Alasdair joined Fitch 20 years ago as a junior environmental designer and currently directs creative output for Fitch studios across North America. His work includes evolving Fitch's brand and digital capabilities to complement their existing award-winning retail and architectural studios. Alasdair's notable clients include Starbucks, Apple, Target, Nespresso, Adidas, Walmart, BP, Lego, Under Armour, and Dell. We also have Christina Ferrari joining our conversation this evening. Christina is a Director of Brand Strategy and Insights at Dragon Rouge, a global creative agency. For 14 years, Christina has been working with startups and Fortune 500 companies to solve complex challenges of brand and behavior. She has collaborated with a diverse range of brands, including American Girl, P&G, Kraft, Harley-Davidson, Hilton, Luxottica, McDonald's, Target, and Tiffany & Company. Christina holds degrees in marketing and entrepreneurship from Ohio State University. And from the brand side, our third presenter is Kambiz Hemati, Head of Global Customer Experience and Environments at American Eagle Outfitters, which also owns the Aerie brand. Over the past 20 years, Kambiz has created new concepts, flagships, and prototypes, and implemented design strategies for Foot Locker, Verizon, Nike, Starbucks again, BCBG, and many other brands. He has served as a creative consultant at Old Navy, as well as a creative director of experiential marketing projects at Google and Sunrun. After graduating from architecture, Kambiz studied film production design with industry legend Lawrence Paul, who was the production designer for Blade Runner, one of my all-time favorite movies, and probably for many of the people listening tonight. Kambiz taught production design and art direction at the Los Angeles Film School as well. And with that, I'm turning it over to Alasdair.
Hey. Hello, Alasdair here in Brooklyn. Can you all hear me? Yeah? So I hope you and your loved ones are all well and healthy. Thanks, Cynthia, for the very generous introduction there, and RDI for introducing me. If we go next, hopefully you can see, it's a bit blurry, but hopefully you can see on screen if you click through. So yeah, that's just come through. So I'd like to think, I can see 85 people at the moment. I'm sure we all are obsessed by brands and shopping and retail, and it's our passion and our professions. And I'm like you, probably just so excited about getting back and doing some shopping in non-vital retail. You know, we've all had enough time of CVS and pharmacy and DIY. We want to get back into some other stores. So I'm sure I share that passion with you. But when we do, I think storytelling can play a whole bunch of different roles. And I think we'll cover some different ones between the three of us. I'm kind of going to sort of focus in on one dimension, which we're really obsessed with at Fitch. And it's really how the story unravels across a whole journey. So if you like an omni-channel journey, how do you start it digitally, when it becomes physical, and then post the shop itself, how does it go on back online and in social? So I'm going to talk about storytelling as a journey. And just as like one starter for 10, every great story needs a strong beginning, middle, and end. And you can judge if my talk does that today, because narrative arcs is kind of super critical. So, you know, goodbye friction-free is the headline here. And really the world has been obsessed with taking away friction from the shopping process, yeah? And what we found through Fitch research is that a friction-free journey doesn't result in really any consumer remembering the journey. It helps that it doesn't create a bad memory, but it doesn't create a positive one either. And that's really the opportunity. And you joked earlier about everybody's worked on Starbucks. So just like, I think a great example of friction-free is the Starbucks mobile order and pay. And if we go next, the headline is, so if the last one was goodbye, this one is hello, memorable peaks. So, you know, so many brands have worked so hard to strip out all the friction from this experience. A lot of brands have actually been stripping out the emotions as well. And being pain-free or friction-free is really table stakes these days. And it's become the new baseline for brands to be friction-free. So we believe that we need to play much more, brands need to play much more relevant role in contemporary culture, creating sort of these sticky moments that create the memories. Sticky moments is a weird phrase. So to a big compliment to Starbucks, their roasteries, I think, is like best in class, and very proud to have played a small role in the ideation, the innovation of those in the process. So next, please. So out of all the different sort of tools and ideas about the storytelling, the one I'm going to focus in on is, it's called the peak end rule. And we use it in storytelling through a consumer shopping journey. So what's it all about? What is the peak end rule? Well, it's actually a psychological theory developed by two professors a couple decades ago, Daniel Kaufman and Barbara Friedrichsen, and it challenges the way we judge past experiences. Next, it unravels how we remember experiences. So just to introduce this diagram, you'll see it a couple times. On the north-south axis, we've got low pleasure experiences, and at the top, much more favorable experiences on the pleasure, low to high. And then on the long axis, it's a time, and that's the journey of how you meet a brand and go to a store and the whole experience. Sorry, if you just go back one slide. So the theory of peak end rule is that we judge an experience largely on our feelings at the peak, the most emotionally intense point, and at the end, rather the sum of every moment. So a nice journey is just when you have these sort of low moments and we're doing everything okay. And yes, if you go to next, the clear recommendation here is that we go and we strategically define two peaks in our journey. And if we do that, we'll have much higher chance of getting a positive memory. And we know from research that if we create a memory, all types of good things happen. It can create a better conversion rate, increasing basket size, advocacy, etc. So we should be thinking about how we create memorable experiences with these two peak end rule. So next. A classic sort of trap that retailers fall into is, we call it the logic trap, where you take every moment or interaction on that journey and you just try to make it like 1 or 2% better, sort of marginal gains, and that really doesn't create the peaks. So to have a little bit of fun, how I always say and work with our team is, let's think like film directors. Next. So what do we mean by that? I want you to, a classic iconic film, Rocky 1, definitely not Rocky 3, 4, 5, and 6. Let's just focus on number 1. what are the images that come to the mind? What are you thinking of? What memories do you have? Let's just sink in for a moment, and then if we go to the next slide, there's a high chance that you're probably thinking of Rocky racing up the Philly steps and doing the pose at the top, maybe the big battle with Apollo at the end. And it's no coincidence that you've probably thought or remembered those one, if not two of those, because the film director has absolutely burnt them in to the film as those two peaks. And if we play that game once more, and we go next, go to a classic British film. Of course, I have to have a British film. The James Bond franchise. I think, what, 13 films, lots of different genres, rather masochistic and all those good things. But what are the images that spring to mind? If we go next, well, you'll probably remember the misogynistic, sexy opening scenes. They're in every film, and also that sort of the big battle, the entering into the villain's epic lair at the end. And I'm sure most of you were thinking of one, if not two of those. And it's very much that, you know, filmmakers have defined those two signature peaks in their story arc when they were writing it and directing it. And really, that's what we need to do as sort of brand and retail creative leaders, is think about what are those two emotional peaks. Next, please. So if we're on board with that we need to create two peaks, how do we do that? And at Fitch, we use a very simple design philosophy. We call it PhD around experience. One is physical, human, and digital. So the peaks could be created by an amazing piece of visual merchandising, something that's physically just wondrous. The human could be a generous gesture. So, you know, getting your shoes polished in store for free. That would be a really, really generous, memorable moment. Or thirdly, you know, the magic that digital could bring, something just so awe-inspiring and something interactive you could take away. You know, you create a live gram on. So these are sort of the tools as designers we actually use to deliver on the strategy of where these two peaks are. And just really to finish off on next, we kind of practice what we preach. This isn't just some sort of nonsense theory. We, when you start to look at when we're strategizing on new formats or new brands in a physical that have a physical retail space, we really plan out what are those two peaks. So the two circles here, and this brand, it's not really important, but it was a mall. It's a mall store for a new shareable auto brand in China. We defined that we needed to create peak number one was around engagement moment, and the second one was around the test drive. So all the other moments are still important. We need to do them well, but they're not the peak. So essentially all the budgets, a lot of money gets pushed into those, and all the design to make those the two most memorable. And if we do that well on next, if we do that very well, hopefully we'll create memories. So, you know, I'm a designer, I don't really understand the psychology, but I know enough. If we do that well, people who shop will have a better memory and a better experience. And when that happens, that can convert itself into dollars. So just to finish off on the last slide before I hand back to Diana, three things to sort of take away, and you can ask questions on it or blow it up when we have a chat later. Every story needs a beginning, middle, and end. A lot of brands and retail make a mistake. They kind of jump into it and they don't tell the story. I always think, albeit we're designing a lot of stores and brands, think like a film director. Think of other mediums. Think as if you're writing a plot in a book. What would the plot be? And the final one is, if you're a brand owner or a retail owner, do you have those two emotional peaks? You know, are people remembering the terrible line and the terrible pay point at the end? Or do they actually finish with an ice cream and a hot dog and an IKEA, which is the positive peak? So I think that's about 10 minutes. Hopefully you can see that on screen. Come back to me in the questions. I'm going to hand back over to Diana.
Terrific. And now we are going to go to Christina.
Great.
Except
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me, Diana?
Yeah, we don't see you yet, but I think that will change momentarily.
Oh, okay. Great. Well, I'll dive right in. So as Diana mentioned, thank you for that great intro. I'm Christina Ferrari, and I'm the strategy director at Dragon Rouge, which is a global brand and creative consultancy. We're headquartered in Paris with 8 global offices, and we live to build and grow thriving brands around the world. Next slide, please. I'm really grateful to RDI for this topic today because it allowed me to really nerd out on a topic that I love and dive deep sort of behind my process for, every day I spend my days building stories for brands, but I don't often take a moment to step back and really think about why does it matter? So I'm grateful for this opportunity. So why does storytelling matter? If you head to the next slide, you'll see that really we know that people build their strongest relationships with other people. And on the next slide, storytelling has the power to humanize brands. So really what that means is that those relationships that we often reserve for other people, storytelling allows us and sort of unlocks that potential for us to connect with brands in the same way that we connect with people. If you head to the next slide, storytelling also provides clarity and focus for brands. And I like to think of some brand building fundamentals that we'll talk about. And so stories are really sort of that North Star for a brand and help to guide our way forward. On the next slide, they also express who we are, why we exist, in a way that people care about. And so it's really crucial that we connect with people through stories in 3 ways, through your head, through your heart, and through your gut. And so your head is all about those rational connections. It's about understanding a brand's reasons to believe and those functional benefits, right, that make us feel like a brand is credible. By connecting with their heart, it's about pulling on those emotional heartstrings, right? And making sure that we connect with people emotionally. And then from the gut, that is truly that primal, visceral, I've got to have it sort of instinctual connection that is really what compels people to hop in their car and drive to a store or to click purchase, send a home. So that gut is so important, and that's the hardest part to really tap into. And then on the next slide, so I just wanted to touch quickly on, with Dragon Rouge, I have the privilege of working across a wide array of iconic brands, everything from Trojan to Coca-Cola. But today, we're going to take a little bit of a different approach. And I'm really excited to introduce you to a new-to-world brand that is actually about to launch in the next 2 weeks. If you would head to the next slide for me. This brand is El Refugio Mezcal. And the reason that I wanted to share this as an example of storytelling is because I think this is a great sort of torture test. So we had to create this brand in a really rapid amount of time. It was such a scrappy approach. And what it enabled me to do was sort of distill down what are the essentials of brand foundation and brand building that we need to tell a compelling story. So I think it's a really exciting one, and I have fallen in love with this brand, and I hope that you will also. So on the next slide, this story really begins with the people behind the brand. So I would love to introduce you to Noel and Rachel. They are a couple who met in a sweat lodge, an Aztec sweat lodge in Mexico. And 4 years later, they were married and they opened a restaurant together, El Refugio Restaurant and Mezcaleria in Todos Santos, Mexico. Unfortunately, due to the COVID pandemic, they had to close their doors. And that's when they reached out to us at Dragon Rouge, and they wanted help taking their mezcal that they already had bottled in small batches. They've spent so much of their time in the restaurant creating relationships with master mezcaleros all over the community of Guerrero, Mexico. And so they wanted to take these bottled mezcal, quickly find a way to build a brand around them and start selling them to the world as a way to really support their livelihood and their restaurant. So, there was a great sort of innate story to start with these founders. And so kind of the first essential building block that we had to start with was like identifying who the consumer is. So their consumer is this curious collector. It's someone who really values unique sense of travel, authentic hands-on experiences. So for instance, this is someone that if given the opportunity to sit in a fancy distillery and sip mezcal, or actually go and watch how agave is put into ovens and smoked, they would pick digging in the dirt every time. So that is this consumer. All right, so that's the first essential. If we head to the next slide, the next essential for curating a solid brand story is for a brand to really cull down their belief into one singular statement. So for El Refugio, they believe in a spirit of curiosity that ignites adventure in its rawest form. So again, that sort of primal instinct. If you head to the next slide, the next sort of fundamental for a brand foundation is your brand promise. And the brand promise should really pay off the belief, right? This is the promise to your consumer and to everyone that you speak to of how you're going to really deliver on the things that you believe in. So for El Refugio, we promise to craft authentic mezcal that fuels curiosity within, leading you to adventure wherever you are. And the next piece of the foundation was really curating the tone of voice. And the tone of voice isn't who we are or what we say, but it's how we talk. And that's a really important distinction. So for El Refugio, they speak in a way that's daring, almost like encouraging people to chart their own paths. They're alive, they're full of life, they're honest, and they're inviting. All right, and so with all of those fundamentals in place, that is what then allows us, on the next slide, you'll see, to stitch together the brand story from beginning to end. So really, it's about igniting adventure anywhere. And then that middle paragraph here is where we really start to play on those rational benefits, right? Where I talked about appealing to someone's head first. So this mezcal is distilled with equal parts art and intuition. And we balance expertise with intention, care with craft. The result is this magical elixir. And as I already discussed, it really the magic lies in the people behind it. So telling this story in a really cohesive way. But at this point, we're really just focusing on one aspect of storytelling, which is that verbal storytelling from a fundamental level. So once we had this in place, the next exercise was to imagine and let our creativity run wild. And on the next slide, you'll see how working with the amazing creative team at Dragon Rouge, shout out to my people, we were able to, in 2 days, just quickly vet a wide range of sort of brand worlds just to start to tap into the different ways that this story could manifest. So, we sort of took a range of different approaches, some of them really anchoring in the heritage of Guerrero, Mexico itself, and the local terroir there. Some of these took a slightly more modern approach. There's hidden elements throughout that really pay homage to the El Refugio restaurant. That concept 5B, that pattern is actually from the front door of the restaurant. So there's lots of layered meaning here in the storytelling. And if you head to the next slide, you get to see, it's always fun, the big reveal of what was the winning concept. So the winning concept here for El Refugio is this beautiful design that really leverages some of the local heritage of this amate paper that wraps the bottle. And then juxtaposed with this bright, vibrant pop of color that sort of nods towards the present day in Guerrero and the way that, this city is really coming alive and modernizing. There's lots of little subtle touches in here, like a room for a hand-done bottling number for these small batch mezcals. And also that jaguar mask has a lot of personal meaning to the founders and also is a symbol of Guerrero. And on the next slide, you get to see how they paid homage to the master mezcaleros themselves. So Don Zac, Fabian, and La Rosa are the master mezcaleros that they have these great relationship with. And, for up until now, the only way that you will have been able to taste these mezcals is for you to travel to Guerrero yourself. So this is the first time ever that, you know, El Refugio is really opening up the world to this like magical mezcal elixir. And on the next slide, I'm going to play a short little intro video. Let's all fingers crossed that it works on Zoom. But what's great about this video is
many
now
people
we start to
associate
take
mezcal with
global
Oaxaca, but
storytelling,
Guerrero has a
visual
long history of
storytelling.
producing mezcal that's rich in indigenous culture and craftsmanship and distinct in flavor. We want people to be able to taste this incredibly unique small batch mezcal, which is why we've created a special bottling just for you.
All right. So I hope that you take this opportunity to go and check them out. This was a really great opportunity to sort of like use our strategic and creative skills for good to help out a family in need. And so it's a brand that, you know, we just have a lot of heart for, and I hope you'll check it out. And also, you know, hopefully it was helpful to see sort of what are those essential building blocks, right? What defining our consumer target, our brand belief, our promise, and then those specific rational points of difference that we weave together in a story to really create the fundamentals for a strong brand foundation. All right, well, thank you so much. And I can't wait to open it up for the final discussion.
We're now moving on to Kambiz Hemati. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
Hi, I mean, great projects and, you know, very interesting. Thank you. You know, I know the subject of tonight is about storytelling, and it's about, and, you know, I thought for a while, what did I want to really talk about tonight? And so I thought maybe I should just tell you a little bit of my own story and what I've been thinking about in the last few months and what I've been working on. And I think that you know, in the quarantine and in the you know, since basically mid-March, a lot of us have found ourselves at home, and a lot of us also are working on projects where we're trying to figure out really what the future of retail is and how do we apply storytelling and experiences to the future of our stores. I started a new position at American Eagle in February, and we had big plans of doing all these amazing experiences and digital connections and connecting the store and setting up labs and creating all this innovation. But then we found ourselves in a position where we had to close all of our stores, 1,100 stores. And we had to furlough 30,000 people. So when you think of that, and when you think of joining a company at that particular moment, obviously it's something that nobody thought of and nobody could imagine. Can we please go to the next slide? And yes, these are all a lot of projects that I've been working on in the last few years with all my amazingly talented teams. But, you know, the last 10, 15 years, all we've talked about is how do we tell stories? How do we bring people to the stores? How do we make our spaces so amazingly interesting that people want to come back and people want to take a shower and get dressed and get in their car and drive and park and walk and come to the store. But really where I found myself is that in the last few months, and really starting at the end of March, I was put in charge of our store reopening strategy. And so really the stories we've been telling are very different from the stories that we were saying before and the type of stories we want to tell. So I can share with you that the stories we've been talking about and how we reopened our stores and And I'm pretty amazed myself, but we actually opened 795 stores up to today. And those stories are really all about how our store is the safest, how it's the cleanest, how we've changed everything. Please come back. And, you know, how do we make all our stores safe? And the way we started with that, I started with our associates. Our associates met with them in an empty mall in New Jersey on March 30th. And we said, how do we reopen? What do we need to do? And we pulled out fixtures and we re-merchandised and we set up stations and we talked about all the things we wanted to do, and we were proactive and wanted to communicate about our intention and about having the safest store, you know, anywhere. And so all of that is what we've done. And for the last 3 weeks or so, as we started to open stores, I've been concentrating on what is the next storytelling? What is the next experience? How do we switch? And if you could please go to the next slide, please. More of the stores that I was involved in. And then the way I think about it is that we always talk about experiences as a public thing. So the idea was to bring a lot of people in the stores and create events. Next page, please. For example, one of the last projects I did or at Foot Locker, we did a store in Washington Heights. Can we go to the next, please? And we created areas where people could congregate, could sit, could charge their phone, could participate in events. Next page, please. And get together and tell stories and welcome people and participate. Next page. And we created areas to hang out. Come to the store, hang out, create events. You're welcome to come anytime you want. You don't have to buy anything. And then we created that same space it's a flexible space that can become an event space. This is an event we organized where we brought a Nike designer, a footwear designer, and basically he explained to all the kids love sneakers, but they don't know how you design a sneaker. They don't know where you start. They don't know how it's done. So he came and he shared with the kids the whole creative process and the process of how he comes up with ideas to do a sneaker. And then we provided art supplies and paper and had kids draw their own sneakers. So all of the things that we did sort of in the past, pre-COVID. And again, these are, if you think about it, it's experiences that are public and that are shared between people, between friends, between brands and their customers, and vice versa. Next page, please. And then going to thinking about how those experiences now have to change. And this is something that I wrestle with every day now. I think more and more the experiences have to become more and more personal and more private. So in essence, instead of having an experience where a bunch of people get together and do it together, the same way we're doing this conference via Zoom, it's almost like you need experiences that are private that then you can share with other people. So we're going from public experiences and that kind of broader storytelling to more personal storytelling and more localized and indeed customized stories. So I wanted to share with you this is a Verizon concept that I worked on in 2017. And if we could go to the next page, please. This is a store in San Francisco. And the new concept of Verizon, tells a lot of stories and is very interactive. it's very clean, it's very flexible, it's very modular. It does a lot of things that I think makes it really successful. Then if you go to the next page, please. And, you know, we wanted the people to be able to touch things, and we wanted to communicate with people and tell stories. Next page, please. And you can see how the interaction happened. And again, I'm thinking, how do we create those sort of personal moments? Next page, please. And so here, what we had created at the San Francisco store was a pop-up, and it was a virtual reality pop-up. And it was a pop-up that was there for a certain amount of time in that red zone there. Next page, please. And so this being in San Francisco, what we did is we did a love letter to San Francisco. And what we wanted to do is we wanted people to be able to put VR goggles on and experience San Francisco, but not like a touristy San Francisco, more San Francisco that would be a secret San Francisco for the people, from the perspective of the people who live there. And so we divided the storytelling in 3 sections: land, water, and city. Land was the beautiful hills surrounding San Francisco. Water was the bay and the port and all of that amazing beauty of the water under the bridges. And city was the architecture of San Francisco. And so we worked there with a company, Riot Films, and they created virtual reality experiences based on those 3 elements. And if we can go to the next page, please. We created these pop-up where you could come and you could put a goggle, and then whatever you saw on in your virtual reality goggle was also projected on the monitor in front of it. So you could experience something in 3 dimensions, but other people could also see you and see what you're experiencing on the screens. And so this was an experience that was a personal experience. It was an individual experience. And so clearly it's difficult to do this now because nobody wants to take a goggle from somebody else and put it on their face at this stage. But I think that as we all think of the future of experiences, these are the kind of things that we need to do. This is where we need to bring technology to the store, and we need to create experiences like this that can also be shared on social media, via the web, you know, with friends and other people that are away and not in the store. And that's it. So a lot of questions and a lot of no particular answers, but I wanted to share that with you guys.
Terrific material from all 3 of you. Really, thank you so much. And now we're going to get everyone on screen. Just give us a minute so we can have a conversation. Terrific. Kambiz, that image of everyone at the Foot Locker store in Washington Heights at that communal table, it's just heartbreaking to me that we don't have that right now. And that really is a dilemma. How do you still, you know, I think there's just such a yearning to have a sense of community and connection still. And I totally appreciate the idea of needing to switch gears with COVID to the personal and I would say more intimate. But how do we look to the future? Because hopefully 2 years from now, we'll be shifting yet again back to, after there's a vaccine, after a more communal world. So how does a brand, and this is really for all 3 of you, how does a brand, you know, you have to be so nimble right now, I think. Obviously, everyone had to be so nimble in whatever role they were in and whatever kind of company or brand that they were working with. But how do the 3 of you think about having to deal with these extreme changes and trying to be ready to change it yet again?
Who wants to start? Alasdair, start.
I'll start talking and see if anything logical comes out. I mean, I think all retail clients and brands in retail are obsessed, rightly so, about being contactless. So that's what's keeping us very, very busy is, as Kambiz has been reopening stores, which is fantastic, brilliant numbers there. I think, I haven't personally been involved in so much of like sneeze guards and stickers on the floor. I think we are more focused on the, if you like, the phase 2 of the reopening, which is around quality experiences. And I totally agree that, they're a bit more personal or intimate, because I think a lot of the data and conversations is around, we've all changed our behaviors an awful lot, our shopping behaviors, and the billion-dollar question is, how much of those behaviors will we continue with versus how much will we go back? And there's nobody who could really predict that yet. And I don't think that China, who are obviously on the early wave on the curve, are there, because they're kind of respiking and things like that. So I think that's the challenge for us all once we've got places reopened. And it's, the problem is much more than dirty door handles and, touching screens, which is kind of what we're all, trying to solve at the moment. I think it's, so many Americans have discovered home delivery that they haven't done before. A lot, massive numbers in grocery, tens of millions have done grocery home delivery for the first time, that they're just not going to be going back and shopping in the same way. And I'm sure that's the same in other categories. So my sort of hypothesis is, and Fitch, is that the physical spaces are increasingly going to be less about product and immediate sales, because so much of fulfillment is going to increasingly come direct to our homes. That's the behavior that's going to stick, I think, more. And so that opens up the question, what are those physical spaces that brands and retailers have? And, I'd hedge my bets and say, I think they need to be more experiential and more emotional, more about learning and education and fun, and less about merch and product on shelves. Now, I think you're all about discovering products and services, but not necessarily purchasing and walking out with a bag. I think that is sort of the tipping point that America's kind of going through. And I think in Western Europe, we were there a few years ago, and China and South Korea were there probably 5-8 years ago in sort of the retail landscape. So quite a lot on that answer there, but I think that's where my head is kind of that next stage of what is a great experience, but with these new change or shopping behaviors.
Christina, what are they talking about at Dragon Rouge about this topic, and how to be nimble and how to change for the new consumer mindset?
Yeah, obviously lots of conversations ongoing and ever changing, but I think that what we've tried to do is just really focus on those human truths, right? And what is the core for consumer behavior and needs in this moment? So one of the things we're having a lot of conversations around is, how do we help people feel not that they're living in fear, but that they're in control of the experience? So, that is sort of this human truth that people desire to feel in control. And especially, post-pandemic, where there has been a lot of fear and it has been a really scary time. So what are things that we can do to help the brands that we partner with to just increase that level of control for consumers? In small ways and large. And so instead of thinking so much about tactics, I think we're sort of taking sort of a long-term, broader approach to thinking about, ways that we're going to help build these brands in sort of a future-proofing sense. So in addition to control, one of the other things we're talking about a lot is, a new focus on well-being. And I think that term well-being, obviously that's sort of another like human truth and a trend that's been around for a long time. But I think that some of the specifics are changing around that conversation right now. And so where, for a long time we talked about well-being as just like self-care and balance, and like I'm doing yoga and I'm also face masking and all these things. I think now it's about how am I boosting my immunity? You know, how am I using food and beverage in a new way to fuel my life and my world? What are the proactive steps I can take to, you know, really serve as a defense and a shield for myself and my family? So, you know, we're seeing that some of these human truths are still holding true, this desire for well-being, but it is shifting, right? And it's taking a different approach. And so how can we, you know, as brands adapt quickly and kind of shift with those mindsets and really tap into and speak to those mindsets, is the advice I would give.
I think there's also right now a lot of, obviously, a lot of concern about fiscal stability within so many organizations. How is that impacting how brands are approaching their projects, their work, their platforms? Because obviously, for example, physical built out, everyone's on tighter and tighter budgets. It was that way, it was building in that direction even before COVID. And now you want to maintain authenticity, but you've got really tight financial restraints. How do you approach that when you're working with, for Alasdair and Christina, and internally for Kambiz? How do you work with your client or your brands to maintain authenticity, especially in the built environment, when you're dealing with budget constraints that are really beyond what we've ever seen our clients facing before?
I'll start with that by saying, I think we're seeing a massive breadth, and yes, you know, in week 3 of March, a number of projects just went on hold and they may or may never reopen. I think in April, a lot of projects kind of get moved out to Q3 to Q4. So yes, everything is very fluid, but I'd say there's no like one clear similarity. I think lots of brands they're all doing different things. So I'm seeing a couple of brands and retailers who are being the most aggressive and sort of jumping ahead that they've ever been. So, you know, they were planning, say, a 3-year strategy to do X and Y, and they're saying, we can't wait for 3 years. We're going to do it now. And this is our moment to strike. So on one hand, we're seeing some extremely aggressive brands, businesses who are investing, and if they've got the money, that obviously that massively helps. But yes, there are, you know, a world of pain out there as well. But I wouldn't say there's one sort of thing running through would be my answer. How about you, Kambiz?
Well, I mean, I think, I think there is no one answer to that, because it really depends. It depends on who your customers are. It depends where the stores are located. It depends what you sell. You know, we and then there are a lot of things we just don't know. So I think when we reopened our stores, we had no idea how people are going to react. We had no idea what's going to happen. But what we knew is that we wanted to put forward something and then quickly learn and adapt and learn and adapt and adjust and go. And so some things we did didn't work. Some things we did work really well. But, you know, from our perspective, we actually were pretty lucky because our customer base is really young. Customer base is 15 to 25. And you know what? Our sales are like through the roof. I mean, like the stores are doing really well. People are back. They want to shop. And so our numbers are great. And so, you know, and I think that at least the way we look at it, and some of my other, like, and we talked about Starbucks before, but, you know, I obviously have good friends at Starbucks. And then the way they're looking at it, and the way some of the companies, I think the smarter companies are looking at it as an opportunity actually to fast track everything. Everything that they were thinking, oh, we should do this, we should do that, we should do it in a year, in 2 years, whatever, let's do it now. And so, so we're really, you know, I think we're part of that team and that group of companies who want to quickly innovate and learn and move, and it starts from our CEO down to everybody. I think we're that's our plan. So we're not going to slow down at all. And I think that one more thing that I wanted to mention, which I think is interesting, is if you guys read the statement by Starbucks, they used to say that the third place was the experience and everything was about the third place. And now they're saying that the third place is really when you drink your coffee, which is very different. So, I think it's another one of those things to consider when we think of the role of the store, the role of the operations of the store, and how we sort of customize experiences for the individual.
Interesting. There's a question that talking about the third place and how a story is shifting, how a brand is shifting a story. We have a question from someone. During the pandemic, most brands have launched campaigns led by storytelling. We are in this together. And suddenly everyone's saying that we're in this together. At what point does storytelling like that become tiring? How frequently do you have to look, I guess, to change the narrative to make sure that you're not then sounding like a broken wheel or repeating something that's spread all over the place? It's wonderful when everyone jumps on the bandwagon, but then after a while it gets to be too much of the same.
There was a meme in in April, and it was to the advertising industry, and it was just picking on that point. And it kind of just had a little storyboard in it. Was, we're all in it together, but please buy my car, and it was it was just like, I think we've all used the word sort of authentic. It wasn't authentic. It was slightly bandwagoning, and they didn't necessarily add anything to the situation. I mean, I understand if they previously bought ad time, they want to fill it, but they haven't really added anything to a pandemic, national, global emergency, if you like. So to your question, when is it too much? That was probably like April, I think. And I think, personally, I think, experience is the most overused and badly used word in our industry. I think brands have to actually just almost like shut up and just do some action. Not even maybe tell the world about it, but be active and not storytell would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Alasdair. I think, yes, by April, there was already fatigue around that we are in this together messaging. And I think for me, the brands who have pivoted quickly and who've really risen to the top in terms of, their messaging throughout this pandemic are the ones that are truly providing something valuable to consumers. And so the best example I can point to right now is what Burger King did in France. They actually did sort of a dissection of how to make some of their classic sandwiches like the Whoppers and some of their other offerings at home with the ingredients that you can get that are readily available. So, they knew that there was a reality that it was harder to get to Burger King, but they weren't limiting you from that experience. So I think those types of examples of actually providing something tangible and meaningful for your consumers are the ones that I think have done the best at like providing value for consumers.
Yeah, I think it's time to really show and tell. It's the time to actually take action, both from a pandemic perspective and also from all the conversations around race relations these days. Mm-hmm. I mean, these are things that we can't just talk about it anymore and just pray and hope for the best and whatever. I think that not just as retailers or designers or but as people, I think it's really time to come up with real plans and original plans. All of that stuff we're in together, it was cute the first week and then it became super old. Mm-hmm. There is a lack of original thinking, I think, in both of those crises right now.
Mm.
I've got another question that came through here that's very much driven by the pandemic, and there are a lot of questions here about pandemic issues, as you can imagine. What are some of the better ideas you've seen or are working on and implementing to create more attractive and effective methods of encouraging customers to follow social distancing guidelines while shopping, traveling through a space in a preferred or one-way direction, keeping enough space between customers waiting in line or even outside? That's, because we're going to be living with this for a while longer. How do we make sure that they're really going to follow the guidelines.
Do you want somebody to start on that?
Kambiz, since you're out there in the real world, any
tell you,
thoughts on that?
I'll start by something funny. I saw a Burger King one, and you know the Burger King crown?
Yeah.
They made the crown 3-foot radius, so it was a 6-foot diameter crown.
Love it. Love it.
And I just thought, it's so ridiculous, but that was actually genius, because it got to like the core of the brand, and it brought some joy in like serious moment. I mean, it's farcical, but I think that was a great story that they told, right?
Yeah, that was very clever. I thought so. Yeah. Again, I think it depends where the store is, and depends on where the location and the state, and it's very fractured, and in the U.S. because of all the different rules and regulations and from state to state. But what we did is we basically, at the entrance of the store, we put kind of like a manifesto. We said, this is what we are doing, our commitment, and this is what you should do. And we put all the steps that we're taking and all the steps that we expect our customers to take to keep our associates safe and themselves safe as well. And so we printed it, we actually did it, and we set it up right in front. And so really the idea again was that as you look at the store, you could tell that we were doing something, and you could tell that we're addressing the issue head on. We're not shying away from it. And so that's really, and that would set the tone as you enter the store. So, there's a lot more to it, but, yeah.
So we're approaching 7 o'clock, and I think there are a lot of people itching to have us all go live and open it up to everyone out there. So with that, Dina, can you do your magic and see if you can bring up everybody live, and we can continue in a crazy Zoom Fest conversation with everyone? This could take a minute or so. There were a number of questions I was not able to get to. I think a number of the topics overlapped, so we covered a lot, but there might be some more dialogue. I see Adrian has a question here that sounds interesting about technology. Okay, little by little. While Dina's doing that, I'm actually going to read one more question out, and we can segue into that as we open it up. Experiential seemed all about technology like VR before the shutdown, and after we have had 3 months of only technology and a glimpse of what happens if our local stores are closed due to e-commerce, will the idea of experiential be a more human thing than a technology gimmick going forward?
Mm-hmm. Want to start? Shall I start on that?
Sure.
Adrian, good question, spot on question. I think my answer would be, it's not just about technology, it's you go back to that structure of experience, PhD, physical, human, and digital. I think experiential comes across the combination of those. However, with tech, absolutely, I think it's going to be less about big screens and tablets in stores. I think sadly that is now behind us, and everything is now really about the one thing that I feel comfortable touching, which is my smartphone. So I think if there is any going to be tech in store, it's increasingly going to be through the consumer's mobile as opposed to tablets fixed to tabletops or screens. And I think that's partly COVID and partly, the fear of virus germs. But also I think that was just a phase in time that we are passing through to the next side. So that would be my sort of provocations. You guys might disagree.
Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly, there's still going to be quite a presence of digital. And I think it's more about, what are those services that make more sense and are more convenient? Because I think the idea that, consumers wanted more convenience, that was happening long before the pandemic. And I don't think that that's going to change, right? Consumers still crave convenience. And, the way Alasdair started his presentation around frictionless experiences. So I still think that there's going to be a presence, but certainly I think that there's a heightened sense of awareness around just craving a sense of community. So ways that we can think to infuse, that greater sense of community and bring that back, because I know we've all missed it and craved that. I think that is where we can focus energy, and we'll see payoff there. But I wouldn't walk away from those digital conveniences and services that are actually making experiences more frictionless.
Great. Toby had a question here. How has mono-channel and data-driven retail process shaped or changed the brand narrative? Talking about big data and how that has impacted brand narrative and how you deal with creating and developing a brand narrative.
It was kind of like for me, let me explain that a little bit. I think, like Nike, creating, this ecosystem, which is kind of creating a data-driven that creating that allow them to create a specific experience for the customer. Now we cannot in a position that we cannot get data fast enough to create that, and everything that I know that everything in retail is all kind of like calculated. So how we kind of like deal with that, and how we should kind of like come up with the gut-driven kind of but still branded kind of storytelling to tell the customer, to engage with the customer.
Toby, was that directed to someone specific?
Oh no, to everybody, I think. It is difficult. I mean, I think everybody's going to experience it. There is no data out there. We cannot get that information. Everything just based on a lot of noise, I think.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen, what's going to open tomorrow.
Yeah. So you're saying lack of data. How do you deal with lack of data where it's all a big unknown?
Right. And we need to tell a story. A brand needs to kind of engage still.
I think there's a couple of parts to that. I think that, we have to be careful with data collecting and data usage and everything. There's a fine line between being creepy and being sort of useful. And I think that some data is helpful in terms of knowing, where certain customers live and what they shop and what the type of, merchandise they want. So you can sort of localize a little bit more the stores and use that information. If we're talking about data as far as not knowing what's going to happen, we're totally in uncharted territory. And I'm not going to lie. We have no idea what's going to happen. We don't know. We have no idea. I'll be curious to know, like in December, where we land between the the virus, the economy, the elections, all of the things happening in the street. Nobody knows what's going to happen. So, it's just very interesting times, to say the least.
There is some data that we can point to that is sort of a different approach, right? But I think it kind of takes us to use our guts to connect those dots wisely. So for instance, we've seen a huge uptick in bread maker sales, right, over the last 3 months. That's a data point that I know a lot of us have laughed about. Everybody's making bread at home. To me, that's a data point that has a moment in time, and I don't think that skyrocketed, growth of bread makers is going to continue, right? So we know that some of those sort of things are situational, right, and were caused by being in quarantine. But then there are other data points that I think are interesting, like sales of Peloton have skyrocketed and gone through the roof, and I think that to me ladders up to the heightened sense of well-being and wanting to care for ourselves and our bodies, and knowing that, boosting our physical exercise is part of boosting your immunity and kind of warding off the virus. And there's things that we're doing that are important. So I look at some of those and just, we've got to sort of connect the dots in smart ways to try to understand what are those bits of data that are situational and are kind of flash in the pan and are not representative of a macro trend, and what are those pieces of data that we think are potentially guiding the way forward in terms of human behavior.
I think it also talks toward the need for, and everyone's heard this, but it's really true, flexibility. That brands are, what they're doing today is going to have to change 6 months from now and change again 6 months from now, and faster and faster pace too.
And
do you think that this is a true test for like brands to kind of find out if their brand narrative, the way kind of like they engage with the customer is true, bulletproof or not? I assume.
I would say less from the data, but I have seen it reinforced that, when stores closed and it became vital stores and non-vital, and all the non-vital closed, our world of brands became much smaller. And of course, we've all been still increasingly shopping for home delivery and such like that. But there's an awful lot of brands that we've kind of just sort of forgotten about because they sort of closed the doors, and we've kind of mentally put them in their non-vital brands. So over the next weeks and months, when we're sort of re-meeting them, as hopefully we are coming out of this pandemic, fingers crossed, I think the stories that they were telling 6 months ago need to be quite different today, because it's almost like you're re-meeting that brand, or it's like a first moment of introduction again, a first date again. And if a brand has been sort of non-vital in my life for the last 3 months, I really feel that the stories and its behavior, it needs to be much more emotional, because I think we're looking to connect with much more emotional brands, having sort of put them to the side, if you like. So I think for me, that's like a rallying cry of around brands need to be much more emotional, wear their hearts on the sleeve. I think that ties back to Kambiz around being, more sort of personal, intimate, but it's something much more human and closer, if you like, but much more sort of vital intensity would be my rallying cry.
With that, they also need to be more authentic as well. I mean, obviously there's brands being caught out by being performative or whatever, but if you don't have a genuine backing to that, to be authentic you're going to get found out straight away. So that, I think, is going to be a big part of storytelling. That's a real story.
Yeah. I mean, we all saw the brands that changed their logos in the first week. I hasten to add that was probably the advertising agency that did it. And then they got busted for treating their staff very poorly, and then changed their logo back. I mean, it wasn't just one, it's happened a number of times. And I think for me, that goes back to that retailers, it's all about action now, and almost like being stumm and not talking about how brilliant they are. They just have to deliver and do it, but do it in this really emotionally intense way. And hopefully, to your point, Adrian, hello, mate, by the way, British in the house, it'll have a degree of authenticity to it then.
Yeah, Alasdair, I want to double down on what you said about the action. I think now is a time when it comes to storytelling to not do so much storytelling, but to do a lot more story doing, because how you are is who you are. How you treat people is your brand, and that's what's going to travel the most. And the other part of the doing side, I think, is going to be, especially for designers, more on the hybrid side of things. In other industries, we're starting to see, especially in events, doctors' offices, things like that, they're designing for physical and virtual at the same time, where the decision can be made at the very last moment as to which way to go, because we live in an uncertain world. So that notion of being able to design for in-person or remote, it's not one or the other. The data is not going to tell us with any advance notice, but the doing is in front of customers, and it's also behind the scenes to be more adaptive.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, the other presentation I was going to do today was about, it's not about storytelling, it's about story doing, but I went the other way and I did think, so, I'm of the same school of thought, if you like. So I'm with you there.
isn't that kind of like the story doing is somewhat guided by the good kind of like a brand narrative to begin with? And I think it is a true test to like a brand, how their main brand can support this brand doing, right? So there will be a lot of like a brand that's kind of scrambling up to fix, to accommodate like this, like the bad events that we have right
now. Along right now with the heavy political upheaval with Black Lives Matter, a lot of brands are trying to kind of relate themselves to the Black Lives Matter, and that in itself is a storytelling in one way, or at least they're trying to, I guess, empathize or like relate to it. What do you, I mean, some of them feel like inauthentic, and some of them feel like they're actually doing something, there's an action to it. Is there anything that you guys can talk about with this political turmoil that the world is going through along with the COVID?
Yeah, I have just sort of one little example that I love to share. So the other day I was scrolling Instagram and I ran into a post by the Milk Bar, which, is the beloved bakery in NYC. And I thought that their approach was about just truly being transparent. So they literally went through and they cataloged, the people of color that they had employed, the number of employees that they had, across their bakery locations, in their retail stores and environments, within their corporate office, literally department by department. And they were really transparent about those numbers. And then they committed to, and I believe it was by the end of 2020, they committed to increasing those numbers across the board. And to me, that was just, that level of transparency felt like it was not performative, right? It felt like they had nothing to hide. And so I think that level of transparency and sort of willingness to bare your soul as a brand are some of, and promising those actions and then letting us as consumers in to really hold them accountable. That to me was one of the best examples that I've seen of a brand like really putting a stake in the ground in a way that I think feels like true action.
So if you designed a store, you think an interesting thing would be a panel, a diversity panel or whatever, where you could literally download the staff numbers that were Black or the things that they donate to which charities or whatever. Would that be an ethical part of your design?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think that level of transparency. Now, I'm a big believer in a brand ecosystem and figuring out where the right place is in the ecosystem for that messaging. So I'm not sure that in store and a big TV monitor is the best place, because it does feel like something that somebody wants to read about and learn more about, maybe in like a more private moment, from home. I was sitting on my couch when I was reading about this, and there were click-throughs to allow you to dig deeper. So I don't want to say for sure that that's the right approach. I think you would sort of need to think about the ecosystem in totality and where it makes the most sense for consumers to really absorb that information.
Yeah.
But it's along the right lines and thinking. Absolutely.
If I can add to what you're saying, I live in Atlanta. And we've got a local restaurant close to my neighborhood called Kitchen 6. Great restaurant, local, very nice, very good. And they closed down during COVID. And about 2 weeks ago, they began to open. They were serving the community through takeaway, very carefully done. They actually opened up about a week and a half ago. And very limited service, very limited seating. It was very good. Didn't go myself, still being a wee bit on the careful side. And but anyway, they sent an email today. First of all, through the whole thing, they were emailing the local community, and the local community actually decided when they should open. So they really had not just a board that they were working with, their board was the local community. And I'll be honest, the general feeling amongst neighbors about all of this was really good. They really connected very well locally. They actually sent an email just today saying that one of their staff was exposed to COVID-19 and has been tested positive, and they're shutting down for the next week for everybody else to get tested. So obviously in Georgia, it's a little bit crazy. Everything's opened up. again, that political situation. But I think what they've done with their brand and the way that they've built their brand over the past couple of weeks with their actions has been really, really good.
That example. Mm-hmm.
I just put a thing on the chat. There's actually a thing called Pull Up for Change on Instagram, where it's a whole feed where brands all basically say what they're going to do to improve their diversity.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, if anybody has anything to share, you can type things into the chat. But also, as I mentioned to Robert, who's about to ask this question, the whole point of this is, feel free to jump in and comment where you can, or ask your questions and unmute yourself when you have a question to ask. So Robert, go ahead.
No, I wanted to ask Kambiz, when you have developed over months a story to tell, a message to give to the customers, you are now opened up, they're coming in, you want your store personnel to connect. You want to be inviting. You want to also communicate safety and security for yourself and for the customers as well. But in the meantime, you have plexiglass shield all over them, and people are wearing masks, and there's an apprehension, which is not actually warm and fuzzy. It's kind of a little bit of a hesitancy to go into the store, to connect, to talk to people, and to make the connection. So how do we overcome? We want to tell the message. We want to invite you in. At the same time, step back. We're a little scared.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because, when we started, so, we engaged with a doctor. So I had a doctor who was our consultant. We had, a few other consultants as well. And then really we started with, as I was saying, we started with our associates, right? So then, one of the ideas at the Cash Wrap was to design like a plexiglass shield. So I thought, okay, let's just do a test and see what happens. So we did a prototype, and everybody at the corporate level was really unhappy about the plexiglass because it's ugly, because it's just sitting there, whatever, right? And I took it to the store and I put it in one of our stores. This is before we opened. And the excitement of our associates about the shield was so amazing. Because think about it. If you're a customer, you just go in and out. You don't care. You're like, but that person working in the store, they're dealing with potentially hundreds of people on a daily basis. And if our associates weren't comfortable, we wouldn't have a good service. So it turned out that the shield was really good for our associates. It made them feel good. And so going back to what you were saying, yes, I know we're wearing masks and gloves and whatever, but I think that some people may find it a little bit difficult, but I think really a lot of people appreciate the amount of care and attention. And I can tell you that, we had emails from a lot of mothers who basically love what we did and let their children go to our store because they feel that our store is safe. So we're kind of mom approved, which I think is very important. So, it goes both ways. And honestly, Robert, we're learning. I mean, nobody has all the answers. Let's be clear. But even though it's a terrible thing and a lot of people, obviously there's a lot of issues, I think if there is anything positive is that it's just the learning and the having the curiosity to have these conversations and connect better with the store associates, with the customers, and maybe this is an opportunity to get more connected in a way. At least I see it that way.
Thank you. Build on that, Kambiz. Robert, I really like your question. Talking with one of our key pharmacists, and they're doing drive-through car park tests for the virus. So obviously their team are coming out to the car. You sit in the car, the window comes down, and that staff members wearing full sort of hazmat outfit, full mask, goggles, you know, all the appropriate PPE, no disrespect there. But when you're sitting there, it's really intimidating, exactly to your point. And as the learning that the pharmacy had was, because they can't see the face, you can't see the eyes or the mouth, it's a very much sort of dehumanized experience. And because you can't see the color of their eyes or the smile or somebody, you know, you can't see somebody saying, it's going to be fine, don't panic kind of thing. So what they've been doing, if I just lean up, they've been putting pin badges on these people, and it'll say, hi, this is my name. You know, this is my favorite. I'm a father of two or something like that. And what they are, they're just small signals of like humanity, of I'm real and there's a real person behind this mask. And they really feel that a lot of the people are being tested in the car, they sort of see these pin badges, and then they start to have more of a connection with, you know, that staff person who's doing the test. And I just thought that was a really interesting kind of point there that kind of connects on what you were saying there about trying to bring humanize what can be a humanized experience as best we can, really.
Oh, thank you. That's wonderful.
Mark Brower with out in Minneapolis. If I could chime in, here in Minneapolis, we're just recovering from the height of the Black Lives Matter, and they're starting to reopen stores. And some of the places I've gone into, while yes, you've got the barriers in place, the ones that have been great are where the store level employees are welcoming you back. There's a certain excitement. I think we're social animals, and in stores they're saying, hey, glad to have you back. What can we do to make you comfortable? And that's the face-to-face, the person-to-person excitement. Yes, we have masks. Yes, you have to do social distancing. But when your store-level employees, like someone said, the barrier makes the employee feel safe, and when the employee feels safe, they're glad to have customers. And I'm experiencing that joy of getting back out and seeing the world again.
It's so important that associates feel safe. That's, I think, got to be the core of what happens in order to transition back to some sense of normality.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's going to vary from store to store what that looks like in terms of protection and plexiglass screens. I went into a pool store yesterday, and they literally had plexi just kind of hanging and dangling from the ceiling, separating the cashier from the customer. And that wasn't too inviting, but it was a pool store. So, you know, I went in to get what I needed and get right out. You know, it's certainly expectations are very different when you're, you know, walking into an American Eagle store or walking into a Starbucks. You know, you definitely want to have that inviting come and stay and shop to welcome people back. So it's definitely very interesting.
So the cash wrap seems to be the only transactional place where you're going to get most possible infections. I mean, is the cash wraps day numbered? We're used to picking up on the sidewalk. Could we do an Apple Pay and it's just put in a sanitized box and you just lift a slider and take your product? I mean, it seems a cash wrap, the days it must be numbered, right?
Yes.
Nobody likes a cash wrap.
No one likes a cash wrap.
Let's get rid of it. How are you going to do it?
Like,
it can't be rocket science.
No, the cash wrap, I mean, look, I personally never liked the cash wrap even before, because the cash wrap, first of all, you know, costs a lot of money. So cash wrap is the most expensive fixture in the store. Then it takes a lot of space, and it's super ugly typically. And then when you add all the queuing and all those other elements, it's just a terrible thing. And again, lots of retailers put the cash wrap in the middle of the store, which I always hated, because you come in and you see the cash wrap, which is really, think about it, the worst part of your shopping experience is when you have to actually cough up the money. So, you know, the center of the store should be about products. It should be about displays. It should be about so much excitement. Come in, you know, forget about paying. You know, paying should be like afterwards. Oh, by the way, you have to pay now. So those are all, my own personal sort of opinions about cash wrap. But then to your point, now with all this contactless and all these things happening, all the conversations around mobile payment, payment on devices, app payments, all of those things are really super, super urgent. So I believe everybody is having those conversations right now.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to say it, that terrible cash wrap experience is the memory of so many retail journeys. So of course it's let's kill it between us. We've got the power.
Yeah, I mean, you'll always need something, but maybe it's not a cash wrap. Maybe it's like a service
tank.
Yeah, maybe it's a service desk. Maybe it's something that is tucked somewhere. Maybe it's something that is for some people who want to pay cash or need more help or whatever. But that sort of battleship thing in the middle of the store, I think, has to go.
Have American Eagle? Do you let people into the fitting rooms, or are they closed at the moment?
I felt that the fitting room, that was our challenge. The fitting room had to stay open because I think that there was a couple of things that were difficult with reopening the stores. One was the fitting rooms experience, one was the cash wrap, and one was returns. Because people were sort of worried about returns, like if you're working in the store and a whole bunch of people come back and they're giving you stuff that they tried on, and now you have to actually reimburse them or refund them. Those were pain points for our associates. And for me, it would have been easy to just say, you know what, we're just gonna close the dressing room and we're not taking any returns. But doing that would have pissed off our customers. Because imagine, then what is the point of a store? If you can't try on anything, why am I there? And if you can't return something, imagine you bought something online, it sat in the corner of your house for the last 2-3 months, and now the store's reopened, you're excited, you take it to the store, and then somebody says, oh no, we're not taking returns. So we had to come up with ways of doing that. And so we did. We came up with a bin. So the return, instead of being sort of like a, touching back and forth between associate and customer, became more a self-service where you scan your barcode and your tag. And then we had a bin, kind of like a big trash can, and you actually drop the returns in there. So that's the way we solved the returns because, we didn't want that to be a pain point for our customers. The other thing is that the dressing rooms, we had a whole program about how to clean the dressing rooms, queue the dressing rooms. We used 50% of the dressing rooms. We have an app where you can sign up, and then you get a text when the dressing room is ready for you to use. We clean it before and after people go in. So there was a lot of procedures that we added to make sure that we still have that as a feature in the store.
Good question. A lot of people there's been a lot of talk about, using UV lighting to kill the virus. And I don't know if that's really been approved yet for use or not, but there's been a lot of talk about adding that. And we all know, especially, all of us in this world of retail design, lighting affects shopping habits and it affects purchases. So has there been any talk, have you heard any talk about UV lighting or using that and talked about what effect that might have on your sales?
Yeah, I heard about the technology. I think my understanding is Magnolia Bakery is using it. The challenge with it is that if your human is exposed to it, it's not good for you. So it has to be done sort of after hours. I see that personally, and I don't know everything about the technology. I think that would be a useful thing to have in an office setting or a studio setting or something that at night, I don't know, at midnight, the light comes on, cleans everything. It's on from midnight to whatever, and then it turns off. I see office spaces using that potentially in the future. For stores, I think is more complicated. And also my understanding is that it's not, it maybe cleans where it touches, but that doesn't necessarily mean if you have piles of clothes or layers of things.
I've unfortunately had to learn a lot about UV lighting in the past couple of months. We have a lot of eye care retailers that we design stores for, and UVC is what you want to use. You're correct. UVC will kill you. It's not good.
Oh, well.
But we found that the average customer, when they go into the retail environment to look at eyewear, they're touching 25 to 30 frames to make a selection. We needed to clean those frames really quickly. So we're working with some very big national retailers who do eye care. And we've developed units that will actually clean 30 to 40 frames at a time. And in terms of the customer experience and what's happening in terms of visibility to that, it's something where we've rewritten the customer experience. We actually developed multi-layer trays for when people are actually shopping and trying on frames, and ones they like and ones they don't like. And it's working out very well. We have a lot of units out there now, and a lot of the retailers are really finding it helps a lot. From the cleaning perspective, by the way, you are right. If it's in shadow, it won't be cleaned. UVC has to actually see the surface that it's going to clean, so you can't have any shadows. But it's been an interesting experience as a retail design guy to kind of get into the science of it a little bit more and understand how it actually works. It helps that my daughter's a microbiologist at Georgia Tech, so that kind of helps. But it's a useful technology, but only in certain circumstances, not for an overall store, but for products that have to be cleaned. So that's been our experience.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Thank you.
So the image that you showed of the art event where they're designing the shoes, do you think it would be ethical to say, okay, all you people that can show that you've had COVID, you could do events for people that have already had COVID? You think that's something where you look at customers and you might treat them in different ways because they're maybe immune, or is that unethical? I mean, every retailer wants to target certain groups, right?
Yeah, I don't know. That is an interesting question.
Come on, don't say you've not thought of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I did not mean to cut you off, Kambiz. I was going to say, I'm not sure necessarily if it's an ethical question, but I'm not sure that consumers love to be put on the spot like that. So I think it might, you sort of see whether or not it would make them comfortable and like, what are the benefits of that? So if anything, I think facilitating connections between consumers is a good thing. But maybe there's a better forum for that, like in a sort of closed private community or something, versus kind of putting them on the spot to share their experience.
Yeah, and I think that falls into a lot of the retailers I'm talking to. They've got pre and post vaccine contingency plans in place, and that probably falls more into a post vaccine kind of situation than something that would be at a current time.
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge is that we don't really know even if these tests actually work. So yeah.
I think there's also a question about how long immunity might last if someone's had COVID. There, I think, are some concerns about people having second episodes. So
yeah, I just saw a story this morning about a woman in Dallas who has now tested positive for a second time. So there's not enough is known about this virus to know anything. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
And liability, corporate liability, that if you're seen to open changing rooms, for instance, and everyone else is closing them, do you open yourself up for any kind of legal ramifications?
So I think in the UK, some fashion stores like Primark, you'll know, did open, but they weren't allowed to open their fitting rooms. So they weren't put on the spot like you, Kambiz, on making that decision. They had that decision made for them. I suppose a state national decision, if you like.
Yeah,
which kind of takes the pressure off your shoulders, if you like. I mean, I suppose that's we're all looking for leadership in that situation.
Do you feel you're getting enough guidance from government as the retail sector for what to do, or is it just obviously different governors, different times, etc.? But there doesn't seem to be any cohesive rule that applies to every store, right?
You know, the challenge is that yes, the rules are different from state to state, and they kept changing as we were sort of planning to reopen, and the dates kept pushing back. So it was a bit of a challenge to follow up and really plan, because you didn't know, are you going to go in Georgia? Are you going to go in Texas? Are you going to go some people? And so it was difficult in terms of training, in terms of bringing back employees, in terms of reopening, in terms of all of that stuff. Very complicated. So I think the challenge is that, yes, every state, every city, every mall almost has their own rules and their own, sort of approach. But I think it's important also for a company to have your own principles and your own rules, right? So if certain places, for example, say, hey, you don't have to wear a mask, then it becomes a question for the company. Are you okay with that? Are you okay to expose your associates to customers without masks? And so those are the questions that retailers are going to have to think about. And for us, we did not want to do that. So even if a state says, you know what, you don't have to wear masks, we require everybody to wear masks. Because I think at some point you have to have your own standards.
Yeah. I think it's also got to vary as well, depending upon your customer base. As you were saying about American Eagle, I mean, you have a very young customer base, so that the level of risk is modified to some extent because of that. Obviously, the ability to kind of be a silent carrier is still there. But just add in about my daughter being a microbiologist. Her fiance is also a microbiologist at Georgia Tech. They went into quarantine in the middle of February, and they're still in quarantine to this day. They haven't left the condo. They're actually going to leave this Sunday because my wife and I have our 40th wedding anniversary. Amazing. And that's the first time they're leaving their condo in about almost 4 months. So definitely their opinion is, and they're very heavy scientist types, that we've all got to be very careful still. And by the way, don't follow George's lead, whatever you do.
Boy, science knows. That's fascinating that they've chosen not to leave all that time, and they're not
really quite surprising. Yeah. It's they're being very cautious about the whole thing, and they're young, obviously.
Well, everybody, we are coming up on about 7:40. We can keep going. We still have about 42 people on the call. But if anybody does need to drop off, thank you for joining us. If any of our panelists need to drop off, you are also welcome to drop off at any time. I'd say we'll probably give it another 10 minutes, and then we will, all sign off together. But I did want to just kind of jump in and say a quick thank you to all of our panelists. Your insight was great and very appreciated. And a huge thank you to Diana for doing a wonderful job moderating the panel today. Now we can kind of feel free to have a few minutes of an RDI happy hour. So everybody feel free, unmute yourselves and say hi.
I still have some red wine left if anybody wants some.
Send some this way.
Vodka now.
And by the way,
I have a question for you guys on how you, Kambiz, I guess, how are you enforcing, for people wearing masks? What are the associates saying in terms of, having to take on that responsibility to tell the customers that they have to wear a mask? And I've seen a few videos just in the past few days of even one guy getting violent. I don't know if you saw that one. Where he shoved the woman to the floor. I mean, that's an additional role that, I guess you don't want to have put on your staff. How are you guys dealing with that?
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, but we've had to deal with that kind of sort of behavior as well. It's a bit easier for us, I guess, because what we've done is that we've actually, since we reopened, we've added a greeter at the door.
Mm-hmm.
And we've also communicated immediately as you enter, but also on the outside, that this is our requirement. So if there is any, and I'm sure there are people who have decided not to come in and, you know, and just go on and sort of rant and rave and do whatever they want. But that typically happens on the outside of the store before they get inside the store.
Okay.
So, but you know what? Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a challenge. In some places, it's been a bit of a challenge. You know, so far we've been okay, but for us, it was more important to, you know, we really truly have to be more careful, and we believe that, you know, and you can see it, and you know, again, and we worked with a doctor who's been our consultant from the get-go. We tested a lot of things. We tested, for example, denim to see how long virus stays on denim. We tried, because we were thinking about all the safety of the clothes that people have to try on.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of that. So, you know, and from what I know, and I realize there's a lot of unknowns out there, but what I know is that the masks are the most important things.
Yeah.
And, you know, from the get-go, our doctor said gloves, don't worry about gloves, because gloves don't really do much. You know, even if you touch something, then it stays on plastic for a long time. So we had a lot of the research that we did before, but the masks is something that we need to really, we're not going to compromise on.
Yeah. No, good for you guys. Yeah, I was just asking about how you're enforcing it. Yeah. You're not tempted to make American Eagle masks to give to everyone as like a nice branding, advertising thing?
Actually, we did do American Eagle and Aerie masks, and they're selling them in stores. But we also offer paper masks for free at the entrance. So if anybody doesn't have a mask, they're welcome to pick up a mask and use it.
It's a great marketing tool, right? If it's printed.
They're not, I think the Aerie ones have a logo, but the American Eagle ones are actually pretty plain. They don't, we didn't really market them.
So you guys who are designers, there must be a lot more work, right? I mean, the area that I am familiar with is beauty. Nobody's doing testing anymore and trying up makeup and doing all that kind of stuff. Those businesses who've got vast amounts of money, Dior, Chanel, all those people, they must be employing you guys to come up with new ideas, right? Are you busier or quieter than you used to be?
Busy.
I think the strategy end is very busy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
actually just had a podcast earlier today, and the focus was on the beauty industry, and how the beauty industry is dealing with the COVID situation, because obviously that's a huge thing, and we all know what drives sales in makeup stores is having somebody applying the makeup to your face, and then once you see how great you look, you walk out buying everything they just put on you. So all of these things are going to take a lot out of the sales and so forth. But this is where there's so much to ideate and innovate, to come up with new things. And, you know, people are beginning to use augmented reality a little bit more, where you can see your face on the screen and you're seeing the makeup applied to you on a screen. So I think we're going to see some really amazing things design-wise coming out of this pandemic.
Yeah, I work in the substrate design area, and we've been spending a ton of time recently on moving retailers to substrates that are non-porous, cleanable, totally rethinking the materials, just on the material side, on what's used in in-store environments that can be more cleanable, more virus repellent in the future. So we spend a ton of time just looking at new ideas on something as simple as a substrate.
Mm.
Very interesting. I want to pause for a second. I believe we have a question from Tanushri. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Hi, yes,
almost
correctly.
All the way from India. I think our furthest Zoomer tonight, dialing in from India.
Yes, so I'm a student, right? Apology for my videos. I'm having internet troubles. So I'm a student pursuing retail design right now, and because and how I'm considering the fact that all these social distancing norms are gonna be the new normal for a while. How important is it for us to factor in these guidelines and precautions that we are practicing in store into our classroom projects that we are designing right now?
Good question. So if I understood the question, it's obviously Aria's professional designers and retail world, we're heavily involved in COVID. And your question is, if that behavior is ongoing, should you be learning more of it in design education? That's how I understood it.
Yeah.
I think yes, but I would be cautious to the lecturers or the people setting the courses to not overreact. You know, is it 80-20 rule? Maybe there's 20% change, but I wouldn't rip up the program that you were doing. But I would say one thing which slightly interconnects with the previous question from the floor, which was around, is retail design busy at the moment? I kind of think, and to the new generation who are coming through design education, you're going to be coming into the most exciting times, because so many brands and retailers, I can see so many people nodding. So many retailers have said no for the last 5-10 years. Well, it's a lot of change, that's a lot of pain, that's a lot of cost, no, 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 too much like hard work. Now they have no reason but to say, yes, we have to do that. So I see there's just like I'm trying to finish on a positive note. I just see there is a world of opportunity for us professionally, you know, as we come through this, to actually design and create and facilitate the next generation of stores. And I think you as students, you should be leading that charge and pushing aside these old men with silver beards, or British men with silver beards, which there seems to be like 3 of them on the line.
Yeah, they're going to be talking about how we react to this for generations to come, long after I'm gone. They're going to be studying what we've done during this whole time.
Well, I do tell people we came through the fall of the Berlin Wall, through AIDS, through Y2K, through 2001, through the whole digital revolution, through, you know, bird flu, swine flu. I mean, I'm not doing this down, but we've had a lot of changes in the last 40 years and we're still here. And like, I agree with you, Alasdair. We've been trained to this point where it's something else we have to adapt to, right? I mean, we didn't have cell phones 30 years ago, and they're just normal now. So it's just another thing on that treadmill, I think. And like you said, I think it's exciting to see what's coming. I'm not scared.
Well, I think also there's going to be lessons that we learn from this experience. Again, going back to my daughter, you know, she's saying this is COVID-19. There's going to be COVID-23. There's going to be COVID-28. These things are around all the time. So I think there's going to be a nimbleness, the ability to pivot. The retailers are going to learn that when the next one hits, it'll be a lot easier. The next one hits, it'll be even easier. So I think this is going to become part of the retail environment, the retail world and the brand world that we all live in. And I think we'll all become smarter and better because of that. And to your point, Alasdair, it's the guys and the gals who are still in college who are going to kind of learn from this and really move the profession forward. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to build on that, I think, Tanushree, it's such a good question. And one of the things that I'm personally hoping comes out of this pandemic is now we have unequivocal data of the effects of our human consumption on our Earth, right? There are dolphins swimming again in the Venice Canal, and we've seen the fog lifting over cities. And so I certainly think that that is something that's going to be really hard for anyone to turn a blind eye to, right? That evidence is now very clear. So I certainly think that, you know, I'm excited about looking towards the new generation of designers and strategists to help really lead the way when it comes to sustainability, because I think that now more than ever, that is such a critical part. And while it's sort of a fringe effect of COVID, I think that evidence is just so astounding that it's going to become increasingly more important. And I think hopefully people are seeing sort of the value in investing in more sustainable practices across the board.
I also think one of the most significant fringe impacts of COVID is the giant leap forward to interacting on video conferencing with people from all over the world, like Tanushree, you joining us tonight. This is completely taking us to a new way of working much faster than I think it would have happened otherwise. And I think that's a huge, huge gain for us all. And for some of our clients who were very hesitant, we have some international clients, and we were trying to get them to do video conferencing and for us not to have to fly each time overseas. And we're there now. It's happening. It's been forced on them and us, but it's terrific. That part of it, I think, is a huge win.
And just investors in the culture thinking, oh, everything's about e-tailing and that's where we're going to invest. And, we've all got a glimpse of our local stores closing, and we're all, people are basically risking their lives to go to a store, a physical store. That's what's happening right now. People are saying, with guns, with no masks, whatever, I have a right to shop at a store. That's great for the store, physical store sector, right? I mean, we've all had a glimpse of what happens if everything takes over, Amazon and the way they treat their employees. So that's good for us as well.
Well, I think it all goes back to that communal table of Kambiz in that picture. That's what everyone really is craving, being around
Human
that
to
communal
human,
table.
not business to business.
Yeah, yeah.
An RDI chapter in New Zealand?
Sounds good.
If I can just add on a light note, I'm going to step off here in a sec, but Alasdair, could you put your arm up to the screen? Because I was watching a video of you the other day. So put your arm up like that. We are armed brothers. I was watching a video of you the other day present because you were going to be on this this call, and the way you talk, the way you walk, your arm, our physical shape, we're like brothers, man. It's unbelievable. So I thought that was quite funny.
We all have our doppelgangers out there, right?
Brother from another mother.
We do.
Yeah, seriously.
We do.
Yeah.
Well, with that, everybody, we're approaching 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I don't know about you all, but I haven't eaten dinner yet, so I'm getting a little hungry. But thank you again so much to all of our panelists, and thank you for all of our listeners. We really enjoyed having you all on. Stay tuned. Keep an eye on your emails, your LinkedIn, social media for our next event. We might just, throw in just a casual happy hour for our next event where we can all just hang out in this type of setting and talk and, kind of take our minds off of pandemic and craziness and just enjoy each other's company. So keep an eye out for that. And again, thank you so much, Christina, Kambiz, Alasdair. You were fabulous, and Diana as well. Absolutely
Thanks,
fabulous.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Let's connect on LinkedIn and social media.
Yes.
Bye.
Take care,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.